the real curtain raiser, perhaps the proper, show-stopping pre-act came in Dublin, and I think you'll forgive us a touch of delight and a touch of smug at this one, because it's been barren enough, a barren landscape searching for happy feelings watching Ireland in the last couple of years. But man, oh man, did they deliver a class performance against England. Yeah. A pretty obliging England, it must be said, but it was a great showing from Ireland.
It was, 100%. It was the best showing of the Farrell era by far, and probably, as a few other pundits were saying, the best showing since at least 2018. Probably the All Blacks in 2018 at the end of it, that we haven't seen as complete a showing from an Irish team as that. Certainly some okay ones in the meantime, but nothing quite as rounded.
It was. You could argue it came from nowhere. I'm sure they'll argue that it definitely came from somewhere, but there were a number of just significant directional shifts which really benefited Ireland in this game. I think firstly, just in the squad, from the squad point of view, just a couple of positional shifts
that made a huge difference.
Henshaw, first of all, out of 12 and into 13 and defending that 13 channel was perhaps the most decisive thing in the game. Like, there were a few elements, but there were a few things that really took England out of the game, and one of which was Henshaw's defence. And it was like, really from the off, England didn't have a good idea of how to unlock Ireland's defence with Henshaw in there, just sort of a man possessed, making all the good reads and sticking all the tackles. England started with like a short ball to Lawrence, running a very Tuolangi-esque line, and then Henshaw got in and holds him up and turns over the ball. And then shortly thereafter, they try one of their classic screens, and Ford's out the back, and Henshaw makes a gamble and says, no, they're going out the back here to Ford, they want to get outside us. Shoots up correctly, stuffs Ford, kills the move, and England then from there, they're unsettled, and they're constantly sort of rethinking what they want to do and looking for ins and outs, and they probably play a little too lateral for fear of Henshaw, and they never really sit him down and get him out of the game and move the ball on. And he basically dismantles the English confidence in their early game attack, which can be enough at times, as we know, to disrupt and completely melt down England.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a huge tactical shift in terms of it was forced because Ringrose came out, but it actually did very much improve what had been a leaky defence, which looked a little bit like shades of the South African system in the World Cup, but with no kind of physical specimen or defensive leader like Nathaniel Am in the 13 channel. And that was what was changed. You have a guy like Henshaw who is a tackling.
It was an Am-esque performance.
It was, because it makes the wingers just a little bit safer when they're shooting, when the 13 is the decisive one, and that made all the difference. But then the other shift that was very important was for CJ's last game, picking him at number 6, where he is the enforcer. He's always been a number 6, even when we played him at 8, but at number 6 it was a beautiful performance from him for his final game in Dublin. He basically charged at Billy Vunipola on both sides of the ball all day long, and the mightiest collisions of the contest happened between those two. He
takes
throughout.
The toughest contacts, doesn't he, CJ? Just this is the thing, is like some 30s are different from others in terms of an attrition point of view.
30 sounds young when you're talking about it, like a halfback or someone else, or even like some props kind of get their strength going later into the thing. But if
when you're an 80-minute back rower who takes all of the big hits, it's a lot.
And you take your job and go, you see that big Billy Vunipola guy? I got him. You know, that's the kind of guy he is, and that's the kind of performance he put in. But having him do so much grunt work like that allowed, once he's in the 6 jersey, and you have Josh in the 7 doing a very typical kind of hustling kind of thing, like they've had all tournament, be it with Connors or Josh van der Fleer, tackling machines, setting nice tempo off the line, and then it allows you to have a playmaker at number 8, which I think the modern game really necessitates, and I actually think the Irish game necessitates, and we really didn't understand that for quite a while. Like, the best number 8 Ireland have ever produced is Jamie Heaslip by a country mile, and the man was a savvy footballer, and he put people into space and created space for others, and that's really important. And in Jack Conan, who put in his best showing ever in an Ireland shirt, you saw what the potential there was for a new role for the number 8, where he's out in the wide channels,
basically on the wing with Stockdale for pretty much the whole game, certainly the whole first half, and it worked really well. Like I was saying last week, just having, like, when the centres, and Henshaw's been brilliant, but he's I've had criticisms of his role in the team from a passing point of view, and so to see Ireland from an offensive point of view make that switch to allowing the more polished footballers, where in whatever jerseys they be, take on the distributing, and then allow sort of the centres to just sort of be themselves, run hard. it changed up the offense dramatically.
It did. Tadhg Byrne linking out there.
Tadhg Byrne was out there everywhere in that first half on both sides of the ball. But from an offensive point of view, he was the guy who was the linchpin of all the little pods of forwards.
Yeah,
he was
like what Adam Beard was doing for Wales throughout the whole tournament.
Only Byrne probably took more contacts, but he sat down defences and passed the ball when he needed to. Likewise, Tadhg Furlong getting little offloads away in little sequences, like for the build up to the second try. Just adding that little bit of extra impetus with just a nice little offload, a little bit of deception. And it really did help the offense. Conan out in the wide channels, he's going to be the guy who throws the killer pass.
And he took that try excellently as well, opportunistically in the end, but many phases. I think I heard it was only Biggie and Henderson hadn't touched the ball in the 30 odd phases leading up to that score, which is just fantastic, a total team try. And it was very, very encouraging, because that is, like, the Ireland are still a multi-phase team, they're still a kick chase team, but a few points in that early going before the Sexton put that kick in, they kind of messed the pass up once or twice, and the pass nearly went to deck, and they were caught behind the gain line, had to compose themselves, but there was no hint of panic, which was good. There was a good patience and a good variety to them.
There's also just good speed, and not just from Murray, although Murray was good for driving a good pace, especially during those long multi-phase sets. But there was a real sense that players were hitting the ball and giving good direction, which is just a massive change from what we were seeing last year and last autumn in particular, when guys were catching the ball and then kind of moving. There was direction and there was running onto the ball. In the build up to the Earls non-try, the second half one that was disallowed, which was a gorgeous finish. We'll touch on Keith Earls looking like prime Vincent Clerc. He was brilliant, insanely good. In fact, if he plays like that, he can keep the jersey forever. But in the build up to that, off the very beginning, they do a nice Henshaw hit up, or whatever it is, Henshaw or Aki. I can't even remember. I think it was Aki, in fact. They varied that play a little this year by bringing the winger in at first receiver. Sexton a little wider, then the hit up a little wider, and Aki makes a good hit up. But then off second phase, they look to move the ball blind, which is like different from what they've been usually doing, going around the corner. And when Murray turns to put the ball blind, he has three runners, a pod of three guys. I think it's Cian Healy, Tadhg Furlong and Biggie and Henderson. And the three of them are motoring, and the three of them are options. And Wilson, I think, bites in on Furlong. He's like, this is going to Furlong. And then the ball, of course, goes to Henderson, who skips through. And that's how you make the line break initially. And it was refreshing to see them. You know, there had been so much talk about the heads-up rugby, and the heads-up rugby had been, flat and unworking. And this was not that, in terms of, it wasn't the heads-up rugby clicking. There was direction and there was purpose to everything Ireland were doing. And then they felt confident within that sort of framework to play well and do things. And I think if Ireland are to go forward, it's clearer now, looking at a future under Andy Farrell, that they could perhaps look back on the first season of this sort of heads-up attack as sort of something that might have had to happen, where they had to just be allowed to sink or swim, and mostly sink by themselves. And then once they were given like a new sort of structured attack where they can probe defences and pick lines, they were much more adept at doing it, because they finally felt they had both the framework and the freedom to operate.
And some of the footballing chops as well, because some of those were like that the Keith Earls try that did stand was a beautiful, like, again, not talking heads up rugby, it was a good strike move off line out, which is credit obviously Paul O'Connell for a well executed line out, but also Mike Catt for a well executed and well drawn out attack. It's not a new move, we'd seen the move before, but not like these moves are recyclable. That this is it, you can kind of scour strike moves from the back and from the past. It's something that Joe Schmidt did for many years.
We call it the Joe Schmidt playbook over here, and the Joe Schmidt playbook was littered with just like these plays from like the minor 10 level in the All Blacks, and just all sorts of plays from everywhere. And seeing Ireland go back to that, it shows good use of footage and good homework done by the coaching staff. I wonder whether it was O'Connell's brainchild. I know he's a big studier of footage.
I don't know, but it's credit to both, because it was a well planned move and well executed, and there was more pressure. They were saying afterwards that the plan initially was for Conan to just be free there, because that's what they'd isolated, was that Curry was the man at the back, but sometimes he wasn't, and he wasn't available, so the idea was Conan to take it, but then Curry obviously was there, put a bit of pressure on him, and just lovely instinctive, like off the cuff way to bat it down for Keith Earls, and then a stellar finish from Keith Earls as well. He looked so dangerous, and actually both the wingers, Stockdale didn't quite get the didn't quite get the chances in this, but did actually do all his work pretty tidily, and any involvement he had was pretty accurate on both sides of the ball. But there was one going for the intercept for the Ben Youngs one, but like he's always going to go for that intercept, isn't he? And I don't judge wingers by defensive standards. I just judge them by how well they look in attack.
It depends on the moment. I mean, if that is to cost a game, you'd be cross. But I understand why he's gone for the intercept. I just think he has to back his inside man to make his tackle and just mark Youngs. And I can't remember, was it Jamie George? I think it was Jamie George who was breaking. So Jamie George is probably
either Cowan, Dick and Dickie. No, it was George. I think it was George was late in the game.
And George probably going to score that if he doesn't.
I think it's probably being scored anyway. He's all alone out there. He was dreaming of a 7-pointer, as he always is, which is not a bad habit in your winger. No. When they're daydreaming, they should be dreaming tries. And Keith Hurls was popping up with all kinds of the spectacular acrobatic finish for the try that didn't stand due to that Cian Healy knock on earlier in the move, but it was just awesome from a winger's point of view. Very technical way of finishing when your feet are close to the touchline, and it was just good to see everyone so sharp in that offense. Sexton looking pretty great again. Like he took a few contacts, certainly in that multi-phase try. He took the second last contact before Conan went over.
He was running it really well. It was night and day difference. But the fact that they were running those sort of mini screens off 9 where Murray was playing
makes all the difference in the world.
Was just coming flat to the line.
A little bit of shape and good runners.
But Sexton running onto the line, he took most ball running all day long and took a lot of contacts for that. But it was much better for that reason. They were playing with proper intent, and they seemed galvanised by the plans that they had. Every line out, there was a purpose to every offensive line out from Ireland.
Yes.
Even the ones that didn't work, most of them did yield things. They were a little shakier striking off the scrum, but off the line out they seemed very dialed in and very galvanised at what they were going to do. And even the long multi-phase sequence, they were very patient, and they played with zip for pretty much the entirety of it.
Well, their ruck speed was the quickest in the championship apparently now on balance, which is very, very good. But I think it was Andy Dunn was pointing out they only had 70 odd rucks in that game, which is nearly half of what they had been doing in the Schmidt era, and fewer than they had been doing in the tournament thus far as well. But more purposeful rucks. They had fewer set pieces as well, but won most of them, and very purposefully. And they were very combative with the English line out as well. I thought the line out in particular was just a high class showing from both teams, to be honest. England didn't have their best game, but at the line out it was just a really high caliber matchup with really, really good players going toe to toe. And England had done their homework on Byrne at 2, and they managed to get a few things off on him, making him look silly once or twice, but then Byrne fired back as well, did manage to mess up one of their line outs, and did obviously do a great choke tackle on a Toji at one point that was doing the rounds as well. Really great performance from him. Sexton's goal kicking, one of the talking points of the tournament in Lions year. He'll dial it in one last time. He's got the little baby fade going very nicely off the left post.
It's Tom Brady syndrome, I'm telling you. It's that man and Tom Brady. When Brady has a good season, Sexton's thinking about it. He's thinking, old men can do it. They can dance.
He's dreaming. It's what's already 42? Yeah, I'll be on the I'll be on the Lions in New Zealand.
He does need one thing about Sexton. I'll say is that he's at the stage of his career where like Tom Brady in the NFL, he needs protecting.
He does.
If you stick him,
he's a very dominant offensive line.
If you put him in a Lions team and the Lions pack get beaten up by the block pack, it's not going to be a fun time.
No, it won't.
So that's the danger with that. But it's a classy performance on the back of a great forward performance. But all of it built from early showings at the beginning of the game, but smarts mainly. I would say intent and smarts. If you could sum up in a word,
smarts is the main thing. It has been painfully missing from Farrell's Ireland. That was very much in evidence at the best of Schmidt's Ireland, and I actually think, even predating Schmidt, Ireland at their best aren't the most physical team in the world, but when they're dialed in, they're both passionate and physical and very smart. They their best showings are them outthinking teams and working around them and being coy.
And it was a great example of how they did that at the scrum. That was
they
for
did
me.
Because there were a few dubious calls. I did feel we got the rub of the green more than England, is what I would say, because there were a few dubious calls. Farrell's double movement call that where no one had held him was an absolute Scooby dubious one. But as you say, at the scrum, the not taking the hit that Ireland were doing and resulting in early feed calls was quite savvy to watch. And then they started pulsing through, and then the dominant one coming through. They bossed that set piece, but they did it not just with brawn, they did it with brain. They did outthink them there.
Oh no, yeah, exactly. It was funny because they played the ref. Like you'd say they get the rub of the green, they played the ref.
They did. Yeah.
And the ref wasn't enjoying not being able to set the scrums, and then he got this idea, because England did in an early scrum kind of just give a little extra on the set call, and he called them on it immediately, and then from there on in, Ireland were kind of taking half a step back, or kind of just soaking a little bit on the hit, staying compact but soaking, and they got a couple of calls which really annoyed the English front row, and then by the end of the game they actually caught them a couple of times. Like the big Tig cheer was just a great scrum from Cian Healy, but taking England's one of their primary set pieces away like that, I still don't think they used the scrum ball as well as they used the line-out ball, and that's a work on, but winning the scrum battle like that was huge. And then obviously just attacking much better and defending. The defence, like from Robbie Henshaw first of all, shutting them down on the outside, and then on the inside the plays out of CJ and Tig Byrne, the amount of turnovers they generated
from Josh as well,
just causing that offence to not have an answer, it is a great English offence. They did not play a great game.
No, they didn't.
They and we'll talk about England now in a moment, but they started quite slow and sluggish, and Henshaw got a number on them on a couple of plays, shooting up in their faces, shutting down early chances. And then from there they were lateral. They were they didn't have an answer because of the quality tackling of Ireland, and they weren't able to win contacts on the inside, and they weren't able to get to the outside, and the kicking game wasn't as sharp as it could be.
No, well, it was diffused partly by a really great showing from Hugo Keenan at fullback with a few stellar moments, but also just really tidy work all round from the fullback. He looks like doing his little mini Rob Kearney impression. He was absolutely great all tournament, solid as a rock. But then also Ireland did a really good job at roughing up both George Ford at 10, who had a very poor showing then, but we were leaving marks on him after every contact. It was something very, very deliberate from Ireland, all legal but very well done. And then the other was Billy Vunipola, where we did send CJ after him all day, and then on a few other occasions it was in CJ and Tig Byrne, or CJ and Big Ian Henderson, but massive contacts with him. And it ended up, he was roughed up by the end. He ended up being knocked out by the illegal shot. It's Aki's second red card for Ireland for dangerous tackling. The man really has to get his back lower, and we know this.
There's a little talk about Billy V's dipping his head. I mean, a lot of guys carry like that, but the bottom line is, like, he just doesn't bend enough and then arcs up. It's sort of a lazy old school rugby league style shot.
Rugby league guys love that shot. They love it because you're leaning. It's a very powerful shot because you're leaning up into it, and you can kind of, if you get it right, you can pop your shoulder into the sternum or the chest there, and do all kinds of damage, and they love doing that. But the practicality is you got to get lower, you got to aim lower, and as you were making the point off camera too, it's like if you were to put Josh van der Fleer in that exact channel with Aki, he'd be around his ankles and he'd have felled him.
Or even his hips, but like the idea that it's not possible to make a clean tackle there. No, it's just not good technique from Aki, and he's correctly punished for that. Is there anything else on Ireland?
I thought it was just a very impressive showing from them. It was a more total performance from all of them, and just really encouraging to see.
The pack winning all their battles, defensively sound, winning the scrum, line out up there with the best of them. It didn't quite destroy England at line out,
but
it held its own. More than held their own. Offense revolutionised much better, and likewise the defense with Henshaw 13. So really a total showing from Ireland.
Something they desperately needed for a vote of confidence in both the team that as is and the coaching ticket. Perhaps I think there'll still be pressure to maybe change thumbs. We're not sure if we'll see Mike Catt next time Ireland kid out.
I think we will.
We probably will though. I think they'll probably err more on the side of sticking to them, and this showing really did restore a fair bit of faith.
We said it was a big game, and they delivered a big performance.
They delivered, absolutely. Now that being said, it was not as big a game for England, and they didn't really deliver at all. It's a very disappointing, kind of tame end to their defence of the Six Nations. It was a pretty poor campaign overall. And this is the first time in 45 years, that they've lost to Ireland, Scotland and Wales, so losing the Triple Crown all three games.
Triple Crown of L's.
That hasn't happened in
Triple
45
Crown.
years. Yeah, not
Triple
good.
Frown.
Triple Frown, something along those lines. It was not good from them. Ford, as I was alluding to, had a very, very poor first half. But I think it was 10 minutes into the game, and he'd had 2 kicks charged down, and he'd thrown 1 pass into touch, and it was like they'd had plenty of chances in that first 10 minutes. Actually, Ireland didn't start all that well. They had a scrum in the midfield that they ran into touch, and England were able to set up a few attacking sets, but the combination of them not reading the game that well, not starting at the best pace, Ford not really executing, and then the other thing, they had Lawrence in there. Obviously it was a last minute change because Daly had been scheduled to play at 13 with Malin's but Malin's pulled out just before kickoff, so they had Lawrence in the midfield. They hit him once in the first half.
When he got held up.
When he got held up, he hit him again, but that was after a whistle in the first half, so the play was scrubbed off. But they didn't use him at all. No. He only had a few minutes in this championship, and it was the same story against Scotland. Like they couldn't. There's still a massive Manu Tuilagi shaped hole in their midfield, and it's not just the fact that that he's not there and he's such a world class operator that he's going to improve them, and that is true. Like any team will be diminished for the lack of a Tuilagi, but the guys they have in to replace him are just not a like for like at all. At least when they have Slade in there, and he obviously wasn't available, they do have the lefty righty kicking axis that they do like, where you have Ford and Farrell lefty righty or righty lefty, and you can kind of do a lot of attacking kicking and dominate the kicking game and territory game that way. I get that, but when you don't have that, like even the plan to put Daly at 13, admittedly a lefty, not really that much of a 13. Like, how are they sitting down? The defence is the issue, and with Henshaw revitalised at 13, it really showed them up for that.
I think it caught them with their pants down. They went back to, they didn't play like they played against France. They didn't counter-attack. That was the big difference as well. They kicked off counter-attack. They kicked a lot in the early goings, bombs in the air, tried to set up lineouts and wanted to strike off lineouts. Yeah. And the first lineout they get was that time that they fed Lawrence, and he goes into Henshaw, and Henshaw holds him up. Yeah. That's a very non-Tuilagi carry from the young man, and that was sort of unfortunate, and I wonder
did that lead them to not go to him again?
Yeah, they seemed to show confidence, but then from there they really couldn't figure out the Irish defence. It was a similar defence to what they've been doing, as we said, but with that 13 making quality reads,
13
shooting
the tackle as well.
And sticking. They were not drifting at all, and then England couldn't get to the outside of them, and that was kind of discombobulating them, and they kept trying to mix up what they were doing off the line out. They really wanted to go wide. You could feel like that was the first instinct, but Henshaw was shutting it down, and then like they actually tried like a shorter line out, and then tried to use Billy V as the hit up man. But then of course CJ and Josh were waiting for him, because if you want to take some forwards out of your line out, Ireland will too, and it doesn't create any more space. So that didn't really work. And they were kind of discombobulated. They ended up figuring it out towards the end, where they just mauled off lineouts, and they actually got good purchase, won a couple of penalties, and got up the pitch. And that was sort of the slow build towards the 2 tries that they eventually got when Ireland were down to 13. Was it when they got both of them, or just one of them?
I think it was one of them in that period. The maul was very effective for them. They also, in terms of the line out, they did very good homework on Tadhg. I thought they managed to avoid his steal that Cowan-Dickie threw very well in that first half, because Ireland were looking for the steal at 2, and they were kind of mixing up the image they were giving. It was a high level battle at that set piece, but they didn't have enough to kind of either sit down the defence or unpick it. They didn't really. There wasn't that sort of
creative playmaking that we'd usually associate with them. Where like Ireland, going off the line out, midfield hit up, reversing the play, having 3 different runners to choose from. We didn't really see that from England. No. They were kind of confused. They wanted to go around the corner. They wanted to get wide, and they were disappointed with the picture Ireland presented them. And then on the other side of the ball, Ireland's cleaning out was really good, and they weren't able to get a hold in the ball. They weren't able to slow it up. And obviously they get their pants pulled down after a decent start, where they do at least own the territory battle at the with the Keith Earls try, which from an England point of view is a bit of a weird one. Like the dummy pod really does sell it for Ireland, and that's what sort of commits a bunch of English players. You see Tadhg Byrne goes up. Curry's the only guy who notices Conan and comes running for him, but ends up leaving a chasm behind
he does,
him.
But he does apply some pressure. Like, it's a great play from Conan to get the ball away. He does pretty much what he's going to do in that scenario, which is go for the guy who's near the ball. But
he's actually lined up at 9 in the line out, and Youngs is lined up at hooker. Right. And if you actually watch out, like if it was to isolate a problem for England, because Ireland actually don't get a support runner there to back Earls. Like the original play design, there's a support runner running on the outside of Earls, so Earls doesn't have to do his worldie of a finish. He can just stick a pass. Ireland don't do that, and there is a chance to shut the play down. Obviously for Johnny May, it just gets done, it happens. But Ben Youngs is defending at hooker in the line out, and if you just watch as the ball goes over, he's just kind of watching it, and he's like kind of at sea, and then before he realises what's happened, Earls is gone, and like really you're the 9. Why are you defending hooker? Once the ball goes off the top of the line out, why aren't you dropping? Why aren't you covering the winger space?
Yeah, no, it's
and
true.
allowing and giving May some support.
It's a little brain fart from him that no doubt will be brought up on video analysis. You need to be running at least. Like there's no way a Kiwi halfback would be stationary as the ball goes in. You need to work a bit harder. It's still a great. You're going to make allowances for strike plays that are going to cut you open. Sometimes just great tries happen, but the response wasn't really there from England. I thought Itoje and Curry looked good again. I thought Mako Vunipola had a poor game. It was a bit of a penalty machine.
Whole front row.
The neck roll on Conor Murray was what led to that the penalty that led to that line out for that try, and that was from an England attacking set that he killed with that. That's pretty criminal. I also thought Wilson at 6 throughout the whole tournament was a bit of a passenger, and I thought he was at fault on a few defensive sets in this one as well. I thought Curry looked great and hustled. He still looks really good and was dangerous. Itoje the same.
Did get held up. I mean, there were a couple of ones where they got held up where I was wondering what was going on in terms of their offense. Like there were guys with no support next to them, just trucking up the ball. The offense, it looked totally dialed out. It didn't look like they came with a real plan beyond sort of kick well, we'll strike off lineouts and get to the outside like we did in the autumn where we got Johnny May on the ball and win the game with our defence then, and neither of those things happened. Ireland brought more innovation. They lost the aerial battle, and on the other side of the ball the puzzle of the turnover, the Henshaw shooting and then the turnovers on the inside wasn't well addressed.
No, they couldn't unpick it. They didn't really have the answers.
You need to
in the game.
sit down Henshaw and then take another ruck and then get around the corner.
Of course you
but
do.
They never made the adjustment.
No, they
never
didn't.
tried to. Like some of the carries, the one-up carries were just crazy. Some of the ones that, like Curry did get turned over on one, and he got turned over because like he had no man on his inside. They picked Curry, no man next to him, he just falls at the feet of I think it was Tadhg Byrne, and there goes another steal.
Indeed,
they were kind of a pooped out offense.
They were. Now it's tough to get up for it when you've nothing to play for, and conversely Ireland were desperate for a win, and particularly desperate for a win against this England team. So like in terms of that, the omens weren't with them, the momentum wasn't, but it's still a disappointing showing. Just the fact that they lost the battle of the set piece mainly because they couldn't game the ref, and it's the second time they've had those kinds of issues this year. Not just discipline, but just understanding the man with the whistle and how he's going to try and ref the game, and not letting that get away from you, or not letting you be the bad guys in his eyes. A few work-ons for them. Obviously Eddie Jones is now having to go forward to defend his career and plan and stuff, and I'm sure he'll be successful because he is an exceptional coach, and like they do have more in the tank. They also have a Tuilagi to return. It's not all doom and gloom, but this side, considering they were champions this time last year, it's a disappointing campaign for them.
Yeah, it is, and nothing kind of worked for them. They had the strike play for Farrell, which was their best play of the match, called for not rolling. They had a crossing call and a maul.
Dubious,
and they just I did as well, and they felt kind of sorry for themselves and ended up losing the game. And then Farrell actually goes off in 55 minutes. They have to bring Robson on.
That was it. They went with a 6-2 split because they had 2 10s on the pitch, and then Ford got hauled out of there. Obviously he was having a poor showing, and then Faz clocked. Was it a I can't remember what it was. He took a contact to the chin anyway. It might have been Big Ian Henderson that he ran chin first into. Again, poor tackles like Aki. Like Farrell's guilty of it too. He was very high in the tackle and it was a lock, and he knocked himself out, which is going to happen. You're still a 10/12. You don't need to get low. But it was disappointing for England.
Shout out to Robson though for the pass to
Johnny
May.
That was a great pass. It shows the virtue. Having 2 halfbacks means you can still move the ball. In fact, the onus is almost on you to do so, because they're not going to really run that much.
2 pass plays, and they did end up getting to the outside. They did some purchase. Also, just quick note before we wrap up. There's been a lot of talk that the Sarries guys are the root of all evil. Cowan Dickey came into the team and had a really poor game. He was all over the place, giving away penalties, bad at the scrum. Hooker's responsible for the timing of the scrum. He got that all wrong. Gets run over for the Conan try.
That's right.
He looked at C for the whole game, and Jamie George came on and was much better. So the narratives don't necessarily
follow. No, they don't. I didn't think that it was a Sarries versus not Sarries issue. I thought it was just, there were a few jerseys. I thought Wilson was the one that was the most dubious in terms of retaining his jersey when there were a load of other stellar back rows, including Ben Earl, who was on the bench. But they haven't quite utilised their assets to their best. capacity, I guess, in this tournament, but they still have a lot of assets, and they're still in grand shape. Even though it was a very disappointing showing this year, what we know from it is just that the 5 teams at the top of this comp are very close in standard and driving a high standard. And but for being a few degrees off, which they have been all tournament, that's what's seen them with the on the wrong side of these results, and ultimately looking back on a disappointing campaign.
Indeed, yes. But going forward, I think there's still promise for both of these teams. But what a win for Ireland! What Absolutely. A win! I think we can soak in it. It was a delight, a true delight to watch from our point of view, and perhaps there are green shoots of optimism yet from this team, which is more than I was expecting. And certainly,
it's the first performance in a while that's not only been a joy to watch, but a joy to rewatch. Yes. I can't remember enjoying rewatching an Ireland game quite so much. I can remember grinding my teeth on rewatches a few times. But if the Irish fans in us are absolutely contented and satisfied and happy to end the Six Nations on a high from an Ireland point of view.
100%. Thank you for watching the Overlap Rugby podcast. If you enjoyed that video, please be sure to like and share with your friends. And if you'd like to hear more of what we have to say, please be sure to subscribe and click that bell so you get notified when we upload our videos. And please join the comment section as well. We like to get a fun conversation going here.